And are your plants feeling the squeeze? It's probably time to get them into a bigger pot. Frankie is back with the basics on how to repot your plants to help them grow. And here's what we need to know, Frankie. How can we even identify that a plant needs repotting?
So when we look at a plant, when it has tight shoes, that's what we call it with repotting. As soon as you start to see a plant is really lacking vigor, we can start to see with this peace lily, for instance, we're starting to see some of the leaves discolor a bit. Even a little bit of some burn marks that are there. Sometimes what we can do is look to the bottom of the pot if it has holes in it, if the roots are coming out. If we go and remove the pot and we see that the roots are just, look at that. That's just a mass amount of root that's there.
What do we need to repot this plant?
So what we'll need is materials to repot. We need a pot, of course, and a pot you have to make sure that it has drainage. We said a little bit about that earlier on in the show. We need potting soil. In terms of the size of the pot, we don't want to go too much larger than the pot we existing have. So we only want to go about 2 sizes up. So if you have a 4-inch, you're going to go up to a 6 or 8-inch pot. If you have an 8-inch, you're going to go to a 10 or 12. I always like to have a pair of scissors and or even a pair of pruners that are with me. Sometimes they're so tough in the pot you need to cut the grower pot off. That's why I like the pruners. But the other reason why is this root system that's here. You can see how it's all kind of matted in there. We either have to release it by using our fingers, and we can do that by just pulling them apart. You can see how we're starting to release. Or what we can do is we can just go through and cut some of those roots. You can see how we're just cutting those roots. And by doing that, all of a sudden, it's going to make those smaller root systems start to spread out in the pot now. Instead of growing in a circle, they're going to go into that new soil and they're going to be like, "Ooh, this feels so good."
Is there anything else you need to think about when you're getting it ready for that bigger pot?
A couple recommendations that I'll have is first step is when it's in its pot already, before even doing anything, water it. So take some water first. That's first step. That's going to make sure that it's moist and not going to go through any stress whatsoever. We remove it from the pot. If it's too much force to take it off the pot, we cut the pot off. Then what we're going to do is we're going to fray those roots and make sure those roots spread out. Start off by putting a little bit of potting soil in the base of your container. Then what you're going to do is you're just going to push a little bit of that off to the side. We want to make sure it's sitting almost at the same level. Then that same, caught that, that same pot that you used to remove, we can then at the same time just use that as our little bit of our way to put the soil in. So we're going to go around and put the soil around this pot. And of course we're using a good quality potting soil, and with that it's going to have the ability to dry out at the same time, collect that moisture as well, and you want to make sure that you're putting enough soil around. I like to repot my plants in spring outdoors because I don't make the mess inside. So if the dirt's falling around, I don't have to worry as much. The other thing that I like to do too is I like to use a quick start fertilizer that will reduce the amount of shock the plant will go through. But there's a reminder out there as well, Tracy. There are some plants that don't like to be in big shoes. They actually like to have their feet nice and tight. So there are some plants out there that don't want to be repotted that often. And those plants, probably some of your favorite, include the jade plant, they include the sedum, and aloe vera. Those are examples of 3 plants that don't need to be repotted that often. But if your plants are growing vigorously and growing nice and quick, you're going to sometimes repot them every year. Some plants every other year. But for instance, a spider plant like this, we could actually repot that guy 2 to 3 times in a season because it's so fast growing. So the quicker the plant grows, the more it needs to be repotted.